Imagine this. A young man appears out of nowhere in a bustling square in Germany, with no memory of his past and strange abilities. It sounds like something out of a movie, right? But it's not fiction. It's real history. In 1828, in the city of Nuremberg, Germany, a mysterious young man appeared carrying a letter addressed to a cavalry officer. He could barely speak and seemed completely lost. The letter claimed that the boy had been handed over as a baby to the author of the letter and raised in isolation, without contact with the outside world. This raised many questions. Who was he? Why was he raised this way? The young man said his name was Kaspar Hauser but knew little else about himself. He claimed he had spent his entire life locked in a small, dark space, receiving food without ever seeing who left it. People immediately began speculating about his origins. Was he a noble whose identity had been hidden? Or was someone trying to protect him from something? Kaspar stood out for his fragile appearance and peculiar behavior. He struggled to walk properly and seemed completely unaccustomed to sunlight. Despite this, there was something intriguing about him. He demonstrated unusual skills, such as an impressive affinity for music and language. How could someone raised in isolation have such talents? The locals quickly split between those who believed his story and others who suspected it was all an elaborate hoax. Some theories suggested that Kaspar might be the lost son of a European royal family, while others thought he was just an imposter seeking attention. Over time, he began learning more about the world and even gained the support of influential people. These benefactors tried to help him uncover his true identity. However, the more he learned, the more dangers arose. Strangers began following him, and anonymous threats reached him. Someone wanted his past to remain buried. One day, Kaspar was found injured after a supposed attack. He survived, but the incident made it clear that dark forces were involved in his story. This event marked the beginning of a series of bizarre occurrences surrounding his life. Each new detail only deepened the mystery around him. For many, Kaspar represented something greater: the struggle between ignorance and knowledge, the human desire to understand the unknown. After his sudden appearance, Kaspar Hauser quickly became a sensation in Germany. People were fascinated by this young man who seemed to have emerged from a dark tale. He was taken in by George Friedrich Daumer, a local teacher and philosopher, who decided to care for him and teach him the basics of life. It was during this period that Kaspar began to reveal his surprising abilities. Despite never having had formal education, he demonstrated unusual intelligence. He was able to learn languages quickly and had an impressive memory for details. Some even claimed that he had a special connection with animals, saying he could understand their behavior almost instinctively. This fueled even more speculation about his origins. However, not everyone saw Kaspar as an intriguing figure. Many considered him a fraud, someone pretending to be something he wasn't to gain attention. Critics pointed out that some of his stories seemed inconsistent. For example, he claimed to have never seen a candle before but reacted to fire as if he already knew what it was. These contradictions led to heated debates. Was Kaspar hiding something? Or was he simply a confused young man trying to make sense of his existence? Meanwhile, investigators and curious individuals began looking into his story. They searched old records, hoping to find any clue about who he might be. One of the most popular theories was that Kaspar was the lost son of the Grand Duke of Baden, a European noble. According to this hypothesis, he had been hidden to protect dynastic rights. Others suggested that he might be an orphan used as a pawn in a larger political game, perhaps even trained to deceive people and create confusion. Regardless of the truth, Kaspar remained a walking enigma. Each new piece of information seemed to raise more questions than answers. As time passed, he began receiving anonymous threats. Strange notes appeared at his house, warning him not to reveal secrets. On one occasion, Kaspar was found injured in his own home. He said that an unknown man had attacked him with a knife, but no one could confirm his version of events. This frightening incident made many question whether there was something much bigger behind his story. Who wanted to silence him, and why? Slowly, Kaspar found himself trapped in a web of mysteries and dangers. But he had no idea of the tragic fate that awaited him. The year was 1833, and Kaspar Hauser had been at the center of attention for nearly 5 years. During that time, he survived attacks, intrigues, and conspiracy theories. But nothing could prepare him for what was to come. At that moment, Kaspar lived in Ansbach, a quiet town where he tried to lead a normal life. He continued to learn and impress people with his intelligence and artistic sensitivity. However, the threats against him did not stop. Anonymous notes still arrived regularly, warning him not to reveal secrets. Some even suggested that his death was inevitable. In December 1833, Kaspar was found seriously injured in the gardens of the Ansbach Palace. He staggered, struggling to breathe, and held a bag of money in his hands. When questioned about what had happened, he said that an unknown man had lured him there, promising information about his origins. The man handed him the bag of money before stabbing him in the chest. The authorities quickly surrounded the area, but the attacker had disappeared without a trace. All they found was a crucial clue: a message inside the bag of money. The message read something like, "This is the key to your past." It was cryptic and seemed to be another piece of the puzzle surrounding Kaspar since the beginning. Despite medical efforts, Kaspar did not survive his injuries. He died a few days later, leaving the world with more questions than answers. His death shocked everyone who knew him. Many believed he had finally been silenced by someone who wanted to protect a dark secret. Others suspected that everything was part of an elaborate plan by Kaspar to gain attention. The investigations into his death were inconclusive. There was not enough evidence to identify the killer or fully understand what had happened on that fateful day. With his death, the case of Kaspar Hauser became even more mysterious. Without him to tell his side of the story, only speculation and hypotheses remained. Some people began to believe that he really was from a noble family and had been murdered to prevent him from revealing his true identity. Others thought he was just a talented imposter, someone who used his story to gain attention and financial benefits. This theory, however, was never proven. Regardless of what people believed, everyone agreed on one thing: Kaspar Hauser had a unique charisma and an extraordinary ability to capture people's imaginations. His death marked the end of an era, but also the beginning of a lasting legacy. The case of Kaspar continues to be studied to this day, with new theories emerging with each generation. Kaspar Hauser's story did not end with his death. On the contrary, it echoed for centuries, inspiring artists, writers, philosophers, and scientists to reflect on profound questions about human nature. One of the first impacts was on philosophy. Thinkers began using Kaspar's case as an example to debate themes like identity, memory, and the influence of environment on human development. Jean-Jacques Rousseau, though already deceased at the time, had discussed similar ideas in his works about the noble savage. Kaspar seemed to be the living embodiment of those theories. Other philosophers like Immanuel Kant also became interested in the case. They questioned how far isolation could shape a person's mind and which abilities were innate or learned. In literature, Kaspar Hauser became a symbol of mystery and alienation. He appeared in novels, poems, and plays, portrayed as an enigmatic figure challenging social conventions. A notable example is the novel The Enigma of Kaspar Hauser, written in the 19th century, which explored the possible political motivations behind his story. Another example is the film The Enigma of Kaspar Hauser, directed by Werner Herzog in 1974, which brought his story to the cinema. In psychology, Kaspar's case also had a significant impact. Sigmund Freud and other pioneers of psychoanalysis studied his story as an example of childhood trauma and extreme social isolation. Accounts of Kaspar raised important questions about mental health and the effects of prolonged isolation. How did he manage to maintain his sanity after years of confinement? Moreover, his artistic and musical sensitivity intrigued many. Some psychologists suggested that he possessed a highly developed emotional intelligence, perhaps as a way to compensate for his lack of social interaction. In the field of social sciences, Kaspar's case served as a basis for studies on language and human development. How could someone raised without social contact learn to speak and write so quickly? These questions remain relevant today. Scientists studying cases of feral children or isolated individuals often cite Kaspar as a classic example of human adaptation. But it wasn't just academics who were impressed by his story. The general public was also fascinated by the figure of Kaspar. He became a cultural icon, representing the human desire to unravel mysteries. Some people even began creating alternative theories about his origins. One suggested he might have been part of a secret scientific experiment created to test the limits of the human mind. Regardless of the interpretations, Kaspar Hauser's legacy remains alive. He reminds us that, even in a world full of answers, there will always be questions that challenge our understanding. Kaspar's case has always been a goldmine for conspiracy theories. From the moment he appeared, people began imagining extraordinary explanations for his mysterious origins. One of the most popular theories suggested that Kaspar was the legitimate son of the Grand Duke Charles II of Baden, a noble German family. According to this version, he had been hidden to avoid dynastic disputes. The story went that the legitimate heir had died as a baby, but was secretly replaced by another boy to protect the family's political interests. Kaspar would be the true heir, raised in secret to ensure his silence. Another, even bolder theory claimed that he was the result of a secret romance between members of European royalty. His birth had been covered up to preserve the family's honor, and he was raised in isolation to guarantee his silence. These hypotheses gained strength because they coincided with historical events of the time. Europe was in constant political turmoil, and dynastic disputes were common. However, not all theories revolved around nobles and thrones. Some suggested that Kaspar was part of a secret scientific experiment, designed to study the effects of extreme isolation on human development. Supporters of this idea pointed to his unusual abilities, like his quickness in learning languages and music, as evidence that he had been trained or conditioned from an early age. Another group believed that Kaspar was simply a talented imposter, someone who used his story to gain fame and financial benefits. For them, his attacks were carefully planned performances. This last theory gained traction after his death, when investigators failed to find concrete evidence that he had been attacked. Some thought he might have injured himself to maintain public interest. But there's an even darker layer to the conspiracy theories. Some people suggested that Kaspar was a pawn in a much larger political game, perhaps even involving foreign powers wanting to destabilize Europe. According to this hypothesis, he was placed on the scene to create confusion and divert attention from other important events. His story would be an elaborate distraction, designed to manipulate public opinion. Regardless of the theory you choose to believe, one thing is certain. Kaspar Hauser's case was surrounded by secrets from the start. Each new clue seemed to raise more questions than answers. Many of those who studied his life noticed strange patterns in his accounts. He frequently changed details of his story, leading some to question his credibility. However, others argued that these inconsistencies were natural, considering the trauma he suffered throughout his life. Perhaps he was simply trying to make sense of what he himself didn't understand. With so many theories circulating, it's hard to know what's true and what's fiction. But one thing is certain. The case of Kaspar Hauser remains one of the greatest mysteries of modern history. Although Kaspar Hauser lived nearly 2 centuries ago, his case remains a subject of study and speculation. Thanks to technological advances and new scientific approaches, researchers are revisiting his story in search of answers. One of the most promising areas of these modern investigations is genetic analysis. With the development of sophisticated DNA techniques, scientists began questioning whether it might be possible to identify Kaspar's relatives or trace his lineage. In 2002, a team of researchers conducted a study comparing hair samples attributed to Kaspar with historical records of noble families from the time. Although the results were inconclusive, they paved the way for future investigations. Another line of research involves the use of artificial intelligence to analyze old documents related to the case. Advanced algorithms can detect patterns and inconsistencies that traditional historians might have missed. These tools are also being used to examine the anonymous letters sent to Kaspar. The handwriting and linguistic style of these texts are being compared with documents from historical figures of the time, in the hope of identifying the author. Moreover, experts in psychology and neuroscience are studying reports about Kaspar's behavior to better understand the effects of extreme isolation on human development. One of the most debated points is how he managed to learn so quickly after years of confinement. Some theories suggest he may have had some basic training before appearing publicly, while others believe his mind was simply extraordinary. In the field of history, academics continue to investigate connections between Kaspar and European noble families. Newly discovered documents in royal archives have fueled debates about his possible aristocratic origins. Recently, a German historian claimed to have found evidence linking Kaspar to the court of Baden. If confirmed, this discovery could completely change the way we understand his story. On the other hand, skeptics continue to argue that Kaspar's entire story was fabricated. They point to inconsistencies in his accounts and suggest he may have invented much of his trajectory to gain attention. However, even the critics recognize that the cultural impact of Kaspar is undeniable. His story transcended mere historical fact, becoming a symbol of mystery and human resilience. Kaspar Hauser's case is not just a mysterious story. It also invites us to reflect on profound questions that touch the very essence of being human. Who are we? Where do we come from? And why do we seek so much to understand the unknown? For many philosophers, Kaspar represents a natural experiment on the human condition. His isolated life raises fundamental questions about the impact of the environment on the development of our abilities, emotions, and even our morality. One of the most interesting debates revolves around the idea of nature versus nurture. Are human qualities innate or shaped by society? Kaspar seems to suggest that both forces are at play. For example, his ability to learn quickly after years of isolation suggests that certain skills, like language and creativity, may be inherent to the human species. However, his difficulty adapting to social life shows how important human contact is from an early age. Another central theme is the question of identity. How can we know who we really are if much of our self-image is built through interactions with others? Kaspar, deprived of this, had to construct his identity practically from scratch. This dilemma makes us think about people who live on the margins of society today. How do they build their sense of self? And how, as a society, can we help them find their place in the world? Moreover, Kaspar's case raises important ethical questions. If he really was raised in captivity to serve some obscure purpose, it forces us to confront the darker side of humanity: manipulation, exploitation, and abuse of power. Many experts argue that stories like Kaspar's remind us of the responsibility we have toward one another. No one should be left behind or used as a pawn in a larger game. Another ethical reflection concerns how we treat the different. During his life, Kaspar was the target of curiosity, suspicion, and even hostility. This makes us question how we deal with those who don't fit societal norms. Today, this discussion is even more relevant. In an increasingly connected world, we still face challenges in accepting and integrating people who are different from us. Kaspar's case serves as a powerful reminder that everyone has value and deserves understanding. Finally, his story also invites us to think about the role of mystery in human life. We live in an age of instant information, where everything seems to be within reach of a click. Yet, cases like Kaspar's remind us that some questions may never be answered. Perhaps that's exactly what makes his story so captivating. It challenges us to accept the unknown and find beauty in the gaps we cannot fill. Contemporary philosophers like Slavoj Žižek and Alain Badiou often cite figures like Kaspar in their works, using them to explore themes like alienation, belonging, and the human desire for transcendence. Ultimately, Kaspar Hauser's legacy goes beyond his own life. He is a mirror reflecting our own uncertainties, dreams, and fears. He invites us to look within ourselves and question what truly matters. We've reached the end of our journey through the mystery of Kaspar Hauser. But his story doesn't end here. It lives on in each of us, challenging us to think about who we are and how we deal with the unknown. Throughout these sessions, we explored his enigmatic life, from his mysterious emergence in the streets of Nuremberg to his tragic death. Every detail of his journey led us to question our own certainties. We saw how he sparked philosophical debates about identity, memory, and the impact of human isolation. His existence was a powerful reminder that we are shaped by both our nature and the environment around us. We also delved into the conspiracy theories and speculations surrounding his life. Whether as a hidden noble, a victim of a scientific experiment, or simply a resilient young man trying to find his place in the world, Kaspar was always more than just a man. He was a symbol of mystery. In modern culture, his influence is undeniable. Films, books, plays, and even podcasts continue to explore his story, proving that it transcends time and space. Today, with new technologies and scientific approaches, researchers are still trying to unravel Kaspar's secrets. His case serves as an example of how the past can continue to surprise us, even centuries later. But Kaspar's true legacy isn't just in the historical facts or conspiracy theories. It's in the questions his life inspires us to ask. Who are we? What is our purpose? How should we treat those who are different from us? These questions are especially relevant in today's world. In an era marked by social divisions, political polarization, and technological advances, we need more than ever to reflect on our shared humanity. Perhaps the greatest lesson Kaspar teaches us is the importance of embracing the unknown. We don't need to have all the answers to appreciate the beauty of the questions. Sometimes the mystery itself is what drives us forward. Moreover, his story reminds us of the importance of empathy and compassion. Regardless of who he really was, Kaspar was someone who suffered isolation and loneliness. His life challenges us to be more welcoming to those on the margins of society. Now, we want to know, what did this story awaken in you? Do you believe Kaspar was a hidden noble, part of a scientific experiment, or simply a resilient young man trying to find his place in the world? Regardless of your conclusions, we hope this video inspired you to think deeply about these questions. After all, it's through curiosity and debate that we grow as individuals and as a society. If you enjoyed this journey through the mystery of Kaspar Hauser, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. We have much more intriguing and thought-provoking content to share with you. Also, we want to hear your opinions. Leave a comment below sharing what you thought of Kaspar's story or your own theories about the case. Together, we can continue exploring the great mysteries of humanity. Finally, remember, just like Kaspar, we all carry mysteries within us. And perhaps that's exactly what makes us human. Until next time, and thank you for embarking on this adventure with us.